Station 1370 WOCA.
Ocala.
All right, 24 minutes before 10 o'clock. When you hear about somebody being successful, it's always good news, right? Quite often, the word success is associated with maybe some kind of a windfall. Is that the word, Robin? Where you make a lot of money? To me, the most successful success stories are when people, especially young people, have had their lives put back on track. And I just heard one, which is awesome. And it seems to be the mission that is kind of an everyday mission for the Guardian Ad Litem program. In the studio, Marcia Hilty is here. She's the circuit director. I'm reading from her business card here in Marion County, and she's going to explain what that means. And Paul Providence has been with us before, and he's the one who told me the success story of a couple of children who were here. Young adults, I should say. They, I guess they're at the age where you can call them young adults, and how they had their life put back together. Good, happy story. And he showed me a wonderful photograph where everybody looked like they were doing well. They are here to talk about the Guardian Ad Litem program and also about an event on Monday, June 3rd. I hope I have this right. The Guardian Ad Litem training session that begins that day at the Oxford Assembly of God Church. And they'll tell us about that and everything that they do and how you can be involved if you are intrigued by what we're talking about. Oh, I got some more notes here. Marcia and Paul, good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for coming in. Wait, that was a wonderful story you just told us. Could you tell that on the air? Just kind of...
Sure. The last time we were here talking about the Guardian program, we brought two of our kids with us. And you'll notice we say our kids because when you work with these youngsters, they become your kids. And since that time, both have been completely reunited with their mom. They're out of the program. They're no longer part of the official program. But most guardians stay in touch when they've worked with kids for a long time. Right. And that picture that I showed you was taken this Sunday with their mother and their grandmother.
Oh, wow. So how typical is that?
Well, I've been lucky. I've been fortunate. I've only had one case where it's been very difficult, and I'm not sure how it's going to turn out. Uh-huh. For me, I've been lucky. Most of my cases have ended up on the positive side. Marsh, I don't know if you would know what the percentage would be on that.
I would say the majority of our cases end up either reunifying with the parents or with relatives.
Okay.
Okay. And how do they come to you? I know you've explained this before, but for those listening and wanting to perhaps do what you do, how does a child or young person get involved in the program? What's the avenue that they take?
Well, typically the route that's taken is a call is made to the abuse hotline, and then from there the Department of Children and Families conducts an investigation. If they determine the child needs to be removed from their caregivers, then a hearing must be held within 24 hours of that child's removal. If the judge determines there's sufficient evidence to support the child's removal, at that time the Guardian Ad Litem program is appointed, and then we will select a volunteer to become involved and advocate on behalf of the children.
Is there sometimes that the caregivers will flee with the children once they're approached?
That doesn't happen very often, no.
Wow. And is it always cut and dry? Does the judge have an easy job or a hard job?
I would say the judge has a very difficult
job. A very hard job? So sometimes, in other words, if abuse was just blatant, that would be an easy job for me if I was a judge. So it sounds like if it's a hard job, it must not always be so obvious.
I don't think it is. It's cut and dry, as you remarked. I mean, there are a lot of circumstances. Human beings are complex, and I think that's why the judges take this so seriously. They want to hear from everyone involved before they make a decision. They look at the facts, and they listen to everyone. So, it's a tough job.
Are there attorneys involved, or do representatives from the Department of Children and Family Services, are they the people that plead the case?
There are attorneys that are employed with the Department of Children and Families. The parents have attorneys appointed if they can't afford an attorney, or they retain private counsel, and then our program has attorneys to represent the best interests of our children.
Oh, wow. The two children, we don't want to name them, but did they have that same story? Were they abused in some way?
It's more of a problem with, in this case, the mom having an alcohol problem. Due to a death to her husband, the father, and it just became a problem with drinking.
Okay, now in that scenario, or something similar to that, do you work with the adults in the picture as well as the children?
We work with anybody and everybody that we can talk to. And in this particular case, the key to the children being happy was getting the mother clean so that the kids could be returned to her.
Not an easy job.
She really worked at it.
So it's easy if the person in other words, if you tell them you got a problem and they agree, that's probably step one, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But if they don't agree, there was a story this morning about babies that are born to women who take legal medications, but the baby is now addicted and needs to go through the methadone treatment.
Yeah. Yes.
It's crazy. I mean, if somebody's doing that, they might deny that they're abusing drugs.
Yeah.
Right?
Correct.
Certainly.
How do you say I wanted to volunteer and come to this meeting? How do you screen the people that are attending the meeting, and how do you know that they genuinely want to help and don't just go out one or two times and then disappear?
Well, first, typically a person that's interested will call us. From there, we set up an interview. We give them an application. We tell them right out that we have to do a level 2 background check, which is the most exhaustive background check. We need letters of reference. And we also, during our interview, typically have a volunteer interviewing the prospective applicant with us, so that we make the right choice. We realize that this volunteer opportunity isn't like a lot of others. It's very intense. It requires at least a year time commitment, and anywhere from 10 to 15 hours a month to help these children. So we want to make sure that it's a win-win situation all the way around, and we want the individual to be happy with their choice, because we invest a lot of time and effort in getting them prepared to serve.
Well, and I'm thinking about the person listening who is asking that same question Robin is asking about. What if I want to volunteer? What do I need to know? And the one thing I would be asking myself is, how do I know I'm not going to get in over my head? I mean, if I'm with some children and some families that they just have a few problems, maybe I can handle that. But what if it's something I'm never exposed to in my lifetime?
Well, I've had that happen, and there are a lot of resources available to a guardian. We have maybe a caretaker wouldn't be the right word, but we have a coordinator who we work with on a regular basis. We have an attorney that we can access. We have other guardians who've been around for a long time, and we really support each other. Yeah. So you have somebody to go to when you get yourself into a situation where you really are not sure of what you should be doing.
I think we asked you, Paul, last time you were here, if you take it home with you.
Yeah, sometimes you do. It really depends on the case. But when you hit a milestone where it's really critical what the judge is going to say, and you don't know. I mean, what we think is the right decision may not be the same position of the DCF. So when you get in front of the judge, you don't know which way it's going to go.
In the courtroom, are your observations considered? In other words, what you've seen and heard, does the judge, does the counsel, does anybody kind of consult with you so they have that as additional information?
One of the gratifying aspects of being a guardian is when you get in that courtroom, the judge will go around and talk to the parents and to the DCF, and the last person she normally comes to is the guardian, and she wants to know, what do you think about this? And probably more than any other bit of testimony, what the guardian has to say is most influential with that judge.
Oh,
because
wow.
we don't have a horse in the race. All we care about is the kids.
There you go. That's true.
And we've been with the child more than the parents probably in many cases. So and we know them, and we know what they want, and we speak for them. A lot of times they'll be with us, right beside us, but sometimes they won't. Sometimes they don't want to be in court.
Okay. And is it ever difficult for you? In other words, are there times when the hard decision seems to be the right decision, and you have to say it?
Yes.
Yes.
You have to say what is in the best interest of the child.
That's tough.
Oh, it is, especially if the child doesn't agree with you 100% of the time.
Yeah.
I mean,
Or the other members of the family.
Yeah,
Do you ever get, like, hate mail?
no.
No, okay. Do they know your address?
Well, and the interesting thing about that, if you're a guardian, is the attorneys for the parents, and each parent has their own attorney, which I thought was kind of strange in the beginning, but now I understand it because the parents are fighting each other more than working together to get the child. I forgot where I was going with that.
If hate mail, I was asking if you got hate mail from family.
So the attorneys make a point of telling their client that if there's one person you want to have on your side, it's the guardian. Because when it gets in front of that judge, the guardian is going to make or break your position. So I've never had a parent really give me a hard time. Maybe they didn't hug me when I left the courtroom, but they understood that we're after the best interest of the child.
When you are being a guardian for the children, how do you make sure that their monetary needs are taken care of? Is there some kind of way that the parents' wages have money extracted from them and they're given to you in a trust fund to make sure the child has food and clothing, school supplies, things like that? How does that work?
Would you like to?
It depends on the situation. If they're in foster care, the state provides monies for them for their room and board and certainly spending. If they're placed with a relative, then that's a whole nother situation, and sometimes the parents will assist them. Sometimes our parents are unemployed and therefore can't contribute very much to the care of the child. We also have a nonprofit. It's called Voices for Children, and they do a lot of fundraising so that when a child is removed and they have nothing but the clothes on their backs or they're very much in need of assistance, that organization will step in and help provide clothing, shoes, various other items that the child may need.
How sad is this? This is so sad knowing there are those children out there, and a lot of those children.
Yes, yes. Right now there are 1,700 children who are involved with the dependency system here in the 5th Judicial Circuit. In Marion County, there are more than 600.
And we don't have a guardian for every one of them at this point.
No.
Oh.
Wow. How important is it to you that they like you? Because that would get in my way. Let me just tell you, I'm just trying to put myself in your shoes. Here's what would get in my way. I want them to like me, So you want to go to Silver Springs? I'll take you. Let's go see the alligators. You want to do some fun stuff,
right?
And then when I say, you need to stop that. You need to be reprimanded a little bit. I would hold off on that a little bit. I think. I don't know.
I haven't had the problem. It is important that the child likes you from your own perspective, and I think it's even important from his perspective or her perspective, because if you have a mutual respect and a caring for each other, it makes the job a lot easier for both people.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to remember that these children, though they're involved with the dependency system, they are not unlike your children, your nieces and your nephews. They've just found themselves to be in a situation in which their parents are struggling. And, most of our cases are due to neglect because of drug or alcohol abuse. So, you would enjoy, I think, the relationship that you would develop with the children because they're like everybody else.
How do you help the children that are still in the home for adults that want to be guardians? Because I know when I first volunteered for Take Stock in Children, my children were younger. They were older teenagers, but I still had to ask them how they felt about it because I would be spending 5 years with this person and I didn't want them to feel like they were slighted or anything. How do you help the children of those families? of the volunteers?
I think most of our volunteers are very conscientious in that regard, that, recognizing that while they're assigned to a particular child, there may be other children in the home. And I think they work with the caregiver to make sure that if they do something special for that child, that the caregiver is able to do something special with the other children. And communication is key in dealing with those types of issues, to make sure that, feelings aren't hurt or misconceptions aren't made.
The training session that I want to make sure we mention, because that's a starting point for somebody
Yes.
out there. Is that the absolute starting point, or is there a step before that? Before you go to training, do you have to apply? Or?
We prefer it just because it's easier for us to again sit down with the person and talk with them, make sure they fully understand what it is that we do and what we will expect from them. And vice versa. They can then tell us what they expect from us and what they need in order to be successful.
So the training program, in other words, there could be somebody out there who wants to do this, never has met either of you or anybody involved with the Guardian Ad Litem program, and just show up, and that could be their first step into doing this, right?
Well, we have a telephone number that they could call.
Oh, good,
Yes.
good. What is
And I
that?
actually brought it with me. And I wrote it big because I can't see without my glasses. It's 274-5231. 274-5231, and it's area code 352.
Okay, excellent. Let's take some calls from listeners. If you'd like to call and ask a question about the Guardian Ad Litem program, this is the time to do it. The number is the WOCA Climate Control Source Hotline, 622-9622. You're on the air. Good morning.
Good morning, Larry and Robin, and I would like to thank the folks that are in the studio with you on the behalf of the community here. I think the work you're doing is one of the silent things that we fellow Americans do for each other, and the most vulnerable amongst us would be the children. And like Larry's father, he probably gets tired of me mentioning it. I was a policeman at one time for our state of Florida down in Miami, so I have much sensitivity towards children and the elderly. And what you do is really, to me, the work of heroes and sheroes. So I thank you on the behalf of the community of Marion County. I'm just one person in a city, but I try to keep my eye on the overall picture of things. And I think the work that you guys do is so important towards our development as a people and civilization. And I would like to listen to the if you have a website or whatever. I don't really have any specific questions from a personal standpoint. I just wanted to thank you as a fellow citizen. And I think it's really it's a big number. The 1,700 was a big number for an area like this. I think we're all trying to improve this Marion County, Ocala area. But I think the work you're doing is something that's not seen by our citizens here, our society. And I just think it's tremendous that what you do is so human and with the help of God's will, or whatever you want to call it. But I thank you, and I just hang up then. Thank you.
Nicely said.
Thank you.
Mark.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
that.
I'd like to say that police officers make the best guardians, so come on over.
Oh, wow, yeah. Bringing that into the equation, do you have parents? I mean, we talk about parents who had drug and alcohol issues. Do you have parents who are actually incarcerated?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And that is especially true of the fathers, as you might imagine. And so for your male listeners, I'd like to make a shout out to them, because the research has shown that when the father is absent in the life of a child, they're much more vulnerable to fail school, get involved with the wrong crowd, end up with the juvenile justice system. And in our estimations, the estimations that we've made, nearly 50% of the fathers are absent or incarcerated.
Oh, wow. So as a man, you might
Yes.
say to yourself, what's the best approach? Should I be big brother or should I be father figure? Right?
Depends on the age of the child, really.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
And are more children in this program because the mothers are promiscuous because they're unwed and they just, have the babies and then they sort of forget about them because they're just interested in themselves?
I think the typical profile that we see is many of these mothers are just plain out struggling, and they themselves may have been the victims of abuse or neglect when they were growing up. They're raising children on their own. They're trying to make ends meet. They may be running with the wrong crowd of people and turn to drugs or alcohol as a means of coping with all the stressors that they experience. And then it just goes too far, and before you know it, kids are being neglected. The drugs and alcohol take priority, and that's the typical scenario.
Because moms aren't angels either. There are some bad moms, just like there are some bad dads.
Sure.
Yeah.
Robin brought up her volunteer work as a mentor with the Take Stock program, and she mentioned that she did it for 5 years. And she knew in advance that this was a big commitment. What kind of a commitment would somebody involved in Guardian Ad Litem be looking at?
The main commitment that they have to make is if they take a case, they go through the training. If they take a case, they stay with that case. We don't want to change volunteers or guardians in the middle of when that child is in our protection.
But are they living with you? Or?
No.
So you visit with them like 1 hour a day, or what is?
No, the requirement is that you have to see them at least once a month.
Oh, once a month. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
But that would be...
You go above and beyond that, though, I can tell. Yeah, I can tell.
Most guardians do.
Yeah. Probably true, yeah.
And the once a month is a requirement. And we have to make sure that we see the child, we know that the child is safe, because, there's some horrific cases that you've read about in the paper where kids weren't seen by the DCF for years.
Right. Right.
That could never happen with a guardian involved because we have to see that child once a month. Now, what happens is you end up spending more time with the child based on the circumstances. In the beginning of a case, you spend a lot more time than that on the case because you have to do all of your investigation. You talk to everybody. You can talk to doctors. You can talk to their school, their counselors, grandparents, aunts, anybody that knows something about that child, because you want to be able to get inside of his or her head as much as you can because you're going to speak for them in court. And that takes more than 10 or 15 hours a month in the beginning.
The next training begins Monday, June 3rd, at the Oxford Assembly of God Church in Oxford, and that's on Highway 301. The phone number that Paul gave earlier, I'll repeat, it's 352-274-5231. And Mark, the caller who just called in, was asking for a website. Tell me if I have the right one here. Let's see, what do I have? I have guardianadlitem.org.
It's www.guardianadlitem.org.
Guardian
yes.
Ad Litem. And just for those who don't know, I mean, I'm not speaking down to anybody, but I would want to know if I did know. The way it's spelled, Guardian is spelled the normal way. Ad Litem is ad, as in an advertisement, so A-D, 1D, and then Litem, L-I-T-E-M.
Correct.
I'm guessing that sometimes that could cause a problem if you don't know what that is.
I think
what
you're
is that, Latin?
right.
You said that was Latin?
Yes.
Okay, what does it mean again?
Friend of the child.
Friend of the child. Okay. All right. And you are, obviously, obviously the success story that you told us about before going on the air, Paul, is that's what it's all about, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's one important factor I think that we haven't brought up is that we need men more than anything. Only 15% of the guardians are men, and when you get a child, a male child, especially a teenage boy, it's a lot easier if a guy's dealing with them than a gal. Although we have a couple of female guardians, and I tell you what, they're great with the boys.
Do you know what I suspect happens? I suspect that a lot of guys are afraid because you hear all these horror stories of being falsely accused of something. You hear. Sometimes they're true accusations. I'm not saying it's always false, but sometimes you hear about these. And people have their lives ruined because somebody made a false accusation.
It's something I never even thought about until I got into the program, and then then you say, oh, wait a minute, maybe that's not a smart thing to do.
Let me just ask that from a practical point of view, rather than trying to scare people. And I didn't mean to scare people, but for practical, I guess would be, how do you avoid that accusation? Do you, if you're working with a young girl, you must have a woman with you at all times, am I right?
No, you don't have to. I have the young lady that in that picture is I call her a princess now. She's one of my adopted daughters or granddaughters, And we've spent a lot of time together, just the two of us, and I never really gave it a lot of thought until maybe after it was over, when it hasn't been a problem for me, and I really haven't heard of anybody who's had a problem with it.
No, in fact, the more typical statement that I hear from men is that I don't think I could do it because I don't think I would have the patience to work with the parents. That's typically what they say. That is the bigger obstacle. They feel like they would lose their temper or become upset because they have that, I want to protect. Yes.
I'm assuming the training prepares them for that, though.
Absolutely, and we talk with them about that. We talk with them about, the appropriate assignment of cases and how to handle those situations. Again, many of our men are assigned to boys, and we find that to be very helpful for all involved, and it becomes a good relationship.
Well, thank God we have people like you. Thank you so much for helping us out. The bigger thank you is for what you do for the community.
It's our pleasure.
The thank you right now, though, is for coming in and helping us help you, because that's our job. Our job is to get the word out about good people doing good things for other people, and thank you for doing that. Just to repeat, the phone number, 274-5231. The date is Monday, June 3rd. The location is the Oxford Assembly of God down in Oxford. And the website. Does the website have all the local information, by the way?
Yes, it does.
GuardianAdLitem.org. Call me if you need any of that repeated, because Robin will tell you once you call me. It's usually the way it works, right? People call me and say, hey, Robin, you take it. Well, thank you. Nice to see you again, Paul and Marcia.
My pleasure.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you so much.
And we'll take a little break, and we will be right back.
You're listening to WOCA News Talk 1370, Ocala's source for what's happening in today's hottest, up-to-date news and topics.
You've got a garden and we've got a show for you called You've Got a Garden with your host, Master Gardener Carol Ann Baldwin. Carol Ann answers your questions about your flowers, your veggies, your grass, your trees, even questions about your bugs. And she's only on WOCA, so don't miss Carol Ann Baldwin and You've Got a Garden each Tuesday from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. right here on WOCA The Source.
Ocala's information station, 1370 WOCA.
Ocala.
ABC News Now. I'm Karen Chase. His lawyers...